Proudman. I'm the director of SPARC Europe. So thank you so much for coming to this session on crowdfunding open science infrastructure, something really close to my heart. And I'm really looking forward to talking to you about how we as a community can help secure infrastructure that we depend upon through collective action. So it's a lively discussion today, and my angel helper today is John Dove. I think many of you know him. And we're going to do something quite radical today. We're not going to have any slides. So no cardinal sin, no slides. So that means that you've got the panelists in vision, and it's also very much about engaging with you, the audience. So if you want to engage with us, please raise your hand or vigorously wave or put your questions in the Zoom chat, and John will support you in that. So what I'd like to do now is just to ask you to turn your cameras off so that you can see who the panelists are, and then we'll ask you to turn them on a little bit later on. So thank you very much for that. You'll also see on the right-hand side that there are files. There are a number of supporting files for our session. So do have a look at those after the session. And at the end of this session, we'll also be having a Zoom breakout room to continue the conversation. So if we run out of time, I will also put a link to that Zoom room in the chat.
I'll get it.
Thank you. Thanks, John. So who do we have with us today? So I'm the moderator, so Vanessa Proudman, as I said. I'm the chair of the SCOSS executive group and director of SPARC Europe. And then we have 4 panelists with us. The first one, we have Lars Bjørnshauge, who's the founder and managing director of DOAJ. Wave, please. He will be telling us about some of his experiences with crowdfunding for DOAJ and SCOSS. And he'll also be telling us about the next steps for DOAJ. Then we have Ilko Verwerder, who's the director of the OAPEN Foundation and Directory of Open Access Books. Thank you, Ilko. And then we have Silvio Peroni, who's the co-founder and director of Open Citations. And Kevin Stranak, who's Membership Development and Community Education Coordinator from the Public Knowledge Project, PKP to you. So, so what's the program? I will be telling you what SCOSS is. So some of you are friends on the call, I know, but to those of you who haven't heard about SCOSS, I will tell you a little bit about that. But most of the session will be focused on DOAJ, talking about the crowdfunding, and then we'll be having an introduction by 3 really important infrastructures of global importance that we're promoting, that you perhaps help fund as a community. And then we'll have questions to the panel and also questions to you and questions from you to the panel. Okay, so without further ado, let me tell you a little bit more about SCOSS. So SCOSS stands for the Global Sustainability Coalition for Open Science Services, and the website is scoss.org. So what problem is SCOSS aiming to solve? Over the last 15 years, we've seen critical non-for-profit open science and open access support services developed. And we've come to depend on many of these with our services or policies that have been developed. And often those services have actually started off as projects. They've been temporarily funded and sustained locally. And they've developed over time, and they have scores more users over time. But now some of them are on somewhat unstable footing. So what happens next? What are the risks if we don't step up as a community to keep them not for profit? They may stagnate, downsize, even come behind a paywall and be purchased by one of the larger publishers, which we've seen in recent years, or they may even close. And also funders, if we look at many generous funders, they have funded so many of our initiatives over the years, but they've often invested in innovation and far less in operations. So what happens to those services that have actually served us well over time, but that are struggling now to fund their operations? Who steps up for them? And I think it's us, because we depend upon that infrastructure, to see how we could pay our way. And what is also important for us is to sustain diversity and equity in the scholarly communication system, which is why sustaining not-for-profit infrastructure is important. So the SCOSS mission is to provide a new coordinated cost-sharing framework to help ensure that not-for-profit open science services are sustained. So, who are we? We're a community-led and governed initiative, and it's mainly networks of academic libraries like members such as ARL, Carl from Canada, CALL, Australian and New Zealand universities, LIBO representing the European ones, Spark Europe and others. So we form a consolidated voice that vets open science infrastructure before recommending it for funding to you as a community. So we alert the funding needs to the community. We provide more transparency on costs because we require that from the infrastructure before we recommend it, so that you know where your funds are going. That also, we hope, increases the efficiency for those of you who want to invest. And what's also really important is that we strongly encourage good governance in anything that we promote, so that they really represent your interests and those of the Academy. What I'd also like to emphasize, though, is we're not a subscription or a payment agency, so we don't collect funds ourselves. So what we do is, as a group, we recommend year on year 2 or 3, normally, infrastructures that we value and we recommend that the community funds. And then you decide, as either as a consortium or as an individual institution, you decide to fund any one of those or all of those, and you have that relationship with the service provider and you pledge directly to them. So we've had 2 rounds of funding. We had the pilot between 2018 and 2020, still running till the end of this year. And we have round 2, which is 2020 to 2023. So how much has the community helped raise for open science infrastructure so far? $3.25 million. We are really thrilled with this result. And this year, we've also helped raise 875,000 of that, but with a very large pledge from the French Ministry of Research and Innovation. So this year, we are recommending 3 key services who are with us today: DOAB and OAPEN, PKP, and Open Citations. So they are infrastructure that need your support for the following 3 years. But we started off with 2 services, and they were DOAJ and Sherpa Romeo. They were in our pilot to see whether this concept worked. So Sherpa Romeo is still at its 42% target, so it really needs your support. Please do get in touch with them and see more on the website. And John, if you could put that link in, that would be excellent. But I'm really thrilled to say that only recently has DOAJ reached its 100% target. So Lars has actually been working really hard to not just to sustain DOAJ and to innovate, and you've seen the developments recently, but also to fund that essential service. So Lars, this is now my invitation to you to share your experiences with SCOSS, to tell the audience a little bit about that, and also tell us about what your next steps are. So it's over to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Vanessa. I'm so pleased to be with you today. As you can see on my screen, The light is a little bit strange. I'm sitting in my summer house. It's completely dark outside, so it's more or less candlelight. I'm pleased to see so many participants. I can see many familiar names here. Among those, a lot of libraries from the United States and Canada who has been long-standing supporters of DOAJ and has actually decided to increase their support to DOAJ due to the SCOSS program. The SCOSS program has really made a difference for DOAJ. Although we, since many years, has been operated based on crowdfunding, small contributions from many libraries and publishers as well. Many of our supporters decided to commit more due to the SCOSS program and due to our outreach and communication with library consortia. We actually got many new supporters supporting us based on the recommendations from SCOSS. So this has really meant a lot to us. We have been able to do things that we otherwise were not able to do. We had a lot of technical back office stuff to be done. But I think most importantly, we have been able to make our services much more efficient in terms of processing applications, reducing the backlog significantly. And this is basically because of the support institutions gave us based on the recommendations by SCOSS. So we have been able to do a lot. As Vanessa mentioned, we have we have reached our initial funding pledge. And, you know, it is exactly 3 years since we made the application to SCOSS, and a lot of things has changed during those 3 years. 3 years is not a lot of time in our environment. So we'll continue to try to get what we call sustaining support from libraries. We'll reach out to new consortia and new libraries, because there's so much to do for us. Our mission is global. Our mission is to help the publishers do a better job, and our mission is to see to that open access journals are made as visible as possible via discovery service, for instances. And as I said, we are global. We are operating in 60 languages. We have a brilliant team, which as well has been enabled by SCOSS, by the funding via SCOSS. So, so it's been a pleasure to be one of the pilot services, and I really like SCOSS because this is one of the initiatives to support open infrastructure where things are actually getting done, so to speak. As Vanessa mentioned, raised more than $3 million, which is fantastic. And although libraries are supporting us basically with equivalent to 1 or 2 APCs, it makes a lot of difference when it's based on crowdfunding. So I think this would be my initial talk about what SCOSS has meant for DOAJ. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take questions after we've had the other panelists speak to their infrastructures. Thank you, Lars. So I'd like to invite Kevin now. So Kevin Stranack, Membership Development and Community Education Coordinator from PKP. Can you tell us a bit about PKP? So just to remind you again, these 3 services we're promoting this year as really important infrastructure that needs community funding. Over to you, Kevin. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Vanessa. And thanks, everybody, for coming. We were really thrilled to have this opportunity to put this panel together and to have a chat with all of you. So it's just a wonderful experience. Thank you. The Public Knowledge Project started as and remains a university-based nonprofit research and open source software development project And its goal is to increase the quality, access, and diversity of the voices that are heard in scholarly publishing. We founded the project in partnership with libraries on the principles of openness, and we continue to be led by those principles today. We developed Open Journal Systems, OJS, which you may have heard of, as free open source software that anyone, anywhere in the world can download, modify, and use at no cost to start and run a high quality scholarly journal. Shorthand, we often refer to it as WordPress for journals. We did this with a really clear goal in mind to provide an alternative model to the traditional commercial scholarly publishing environment that we felt that wasn't serving libraries well. Since our founding, a vibrant and global community has developed around our software with over 10,000 journals being published from almost every country in the world. And library publishing has taken off internationally, often using OJS. Many of the journals that use OJS can be found in the DOAJ to publish their content. And we work with the staff at the DOAJ and with Lars and his team to make the transfer of the metadata from OJS into their system as seamless as possible, to help the journals apply to the DOAJ and to assist the DOAJ staff to make their evaluation of the journal's quality as easy as possible. We also ensure that our software can interoperate with other critical systems that libraries value, things like ORCID, Crossref and DOIs, Dataverse, Paperbuzz, and more. We've got a great community of volunteers around the world who've translated OJS into over 40 languages. I think that's a really important reason why we've had the uptake globally. Volunteers contribute code to improve and extend the software. They help one another on our free community forum. They participate in usability enhancement sessions, write documentation, and donate financially to support our work. We've developed a community-based governance structure that includes an advisory committee made up of library leaders for our organizational oversight and a technical committee to advise in our future software directions. We continue to believe strongly in the need for a viable open alternative to the traditional commercial publishing model. We believe it's important for there to be competition and choice, and we're committed to ensuring that OJS plays a key role in making that alternative a reality. But supporting an international community of this size that contributes so much valuable content into the DOAJ and to the world and to library users everywhere really requires financial support. We give everything we do away for free, so we must rely on these kinds of community funding models, both involving organizations that use our software, but also those that benefit from the open content that we facilitate. So we're really hoping that we can count on pledges from this community. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Kevin. So Ilko Ferreira's up next. He's the director of OAPEN Foundation and DOAB, Directory of Open Access Books. Thank you, Ilko. Ilko, you're on mute. Yes.
Sorry about that. As Vanessa said, I'm introducing two connected services, OAPEN and DOAB, the Directory of Open Access Books. Both are dedicated to support open access to academic books, that is monographs and edited collections. Both operate globally. OAPEN launched in 2010, 10 years ago last month, and OAPEN works with academic book publishers and research funders to host open access books. The books are full text, which enables full text search across the collection. OAPEN provides added services such as deposit, dissemination, preservation, annotation, and usage reporting. By contrast, DOAB only hosts the metadata of books and chapters and provides links to the freely available open access edition on the publisher's website. Both OAPEN and DOAB make all the metadata freely available in various formats for harvesting and downloads by libraries to integrate into their systems, and of course to discovery services such as OCLC, WorldCat, Primo, and EBSCO Discovery. DOAB launched in beta in 2011, Following the example of DOAJ and with help from Lars, DOAB started out as a new service managed by OAPEN, but currently, last year, it became an independent service, and it's now a non-profit foundation governed by OAPEN with Open Edition. DOAB has grown significantly and now lists 32,000 open access books and chapters from more than 400 publishers worldwide. It has developed into a global hub for open access books. As DOAB develops into this global service, it must recognize the diversity in publishing practices around the world, and this connects with the effort of quality assurance, which is essential to achieve trust. Currently, DOAB is developing a certification service for peer review practices to improve quality assurance and transparency of open access books. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilko. And last but not least, Silvio Peroni, co-founder and director of Open Citations. Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa, for the introduction. Thank to all for being here. Just a brief introduction. Open Citation has been established as a fully free and open infrastructure to provide access to global scholarly bibliographic and citation data. And the idea is to have quality and coverage of this data to rival those from proprietary services such as Web of Science and Scopus. Open Citation is not for profit, and all our services are free, of course, although we have costs to make and keep them free, as you can imagine. And currently, we provide data containing more than 700 million citations that the community can use and reuse for any purpose. For instance, such data can be crucial as a vehicle for use in national or international research evaluation exercises. To make such activities more transparent and reproducible as compared at least to other proprietary services. As a librarian, you can use our citation data, for instance, by using our REST API to enhance or develop new tools that can support your authors, your researchers, your students, your institutional administrators, for instance, by providing metrics to monitor research at your institution, or by providing new discoverability tools for research products such as publication data and other research outcomes. In Open Citation, the community is directly involved in the governance. We have an international advisory board that includes people coming from different countries and institutions. We have librarians, open science advocates, publishers, researchers, members of other open infrastructure, and you can be part of all of this. There are two possible paths. Let's say you can become a member of Open Citation, or you can support our goals by means of financial donations. Currently, we are only at 20% of our target, so we very much appreciate any pledges from US, Canada, and any other country which want to support our vision and in the end, our goals. And that's all for this brief introduction. Thank you very much for your attention.
So thank you very much, all. So I'd just like to, the audience just to be patient just for a couple of questions. So I've got two questions I think that I'm going to pose to the panel, and then it's over to you. I'm sure you're itching. You've got questions for both DOAJ and for the other three. So don't hold back. Put some of those in the chat. But first off, what I'd like to ask the last three of you, so what particular risks does your type of service face if you're not sufficiently funded? And how will this affect the open science community? So who'd like to go first? And if you could try to keep it brief so we can get some more questions in.
Sure. I can go first.
Yes, go ahead.
Really, I think that we face two primary risks. One is the without sufficient funding, the pace of our development and innovation will slow down. We just won't be able to do as much to continually enhance and improve the software. And that's concerning because if the increased development doesn't go on, if the addition of new features goes on, we will fall behind the commercial sector and lose that advantage that we currently have. And the second one is that we give away so much free support. We have free online courses, free documentation, free technical support, and we would need to pull back from the amount of support that we offer as well. And again, that becomes a downward spiral that if you aren't helping people to use your tools and be successful with your tools, they may use your tools less. So 2 areas for us.
Thank you, Kevin. Silvio?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
It's pretty easy. There is one specific risk that I can envision, that without having funds, all the services that we are running in the production of new data will get stuck, simply. All the data that we made available are available right now online, but we have to keep them updated, basically. And for doing that, we need manpower to manage both the technical infrastructure, servers, these kind of things that are used for providing these services. And also, we need developers that maintain and develop new services, allow us to ingest new data, to extend our REST API to being queried. And this is exactly the risk that we are facing if we don't have sufficient funds. We need people to work on that in order to continue to make this service a reality, which is used within the open science community by a lot of researchers, a lot of advocates as well.
Thank you, Silvio. And Elko, do you have something to add?
Yeah, so our position is that we're really independent in the sense that they are independent foundations. We're not publicly funded. We're not part of a larger institution. And essentially that means that if we can't find the money to carry out our activities, we're faced with the possibility of bankruptcy, or actually the need to close down our activities. So we do rely on support from the community to provide our services.
Okay, thank you. So Ilko, you just said that you're independent. I'd really like to focus on that point. So I think, so all of you are not-for-profit status, right? Yep. So has your not-for-profit status and independence from any of the larger commercial players made a difference in any way? So with your mission or services or policies or your relations with your users or members, clients? Who'd like to go first?
I can go first again on this one.
Go ahead.
I just say that, you know, our independence has really allowed us to be led by the community, who are our stakeholders, rather than by shareholders. It's allowed us to invest in some of those things I mentioned in my introduction, you know, 40 translations, to give away the software code, to give away online courses, to give away documentation. None of that would be viable in a commercial operation. A commercial operation would need to be, you know, generating a profit through those activities, and that's not something that we need to worry about or do, which allows us to really focus on increasing the use of our software and the diversity of people from around the world who can use our software in multiple languages.
Thanks.
If I may, I'm totally aligned with what Kevin said, basically. I mean, I think that the independent status that we have is exactly what allows us to do the interest of the community without, let's say, ulterior motives. The point is that not being governed by commercial players, in principle, allowed us at Open Citation to adopt even let's say, surely non-commercial approach about how we provide data services and software that follow open science principle. I mean, our data are totally free to be reused without any constraint. Services that are without any rate limits available, and software is totally open source. And this can be done only, in my opinion, if we are independent, if we are non-for-profit, and if there is no commercial services that in principle may, let's say, use its power to lead to specific commercial revenues, let's say.
Thank you. Ilko, would you like to finish this one up for us?
Yep. Yeah, so independence to us means we can follow our mission, which is to support and enable open access books. And if we had commercial considerations, we probably wouldn't have started trying to do that. So the mission is totally essential to what we do, and commercial considerations would probably have prevented us from even attempting to offer this infrastructure service.
All right, thank you. So I hope that some of this inspired the audience. I'd like you to all open up your cameras now and join us. And please, we're really keen to hear your questions. So what questions, comments do you have for the panel? Opening this up, John is looking at the chat. You can also raise your hand.
Brian, I'm not seeing the panel of attendees, so.
Oh, Brian, can you help us here?
The attendees have to type into the chat if they have questions.
Okay, so John, sorry, what are you stuck with?
Well, I can't, normally I'd be able to see the whole, even though it's a big group, I'd be able to see the little screens. And so I could see if somebody's waving their hand. So if you want to talk, then please, somebody's reporting there's no option to turn our cameras on.
So we have, okay, sorry about that. We have Athena Hoopener who has raised her hand.
All right, Athena, can you turn off your, turn on your microphone and ask your question?
I turned her on, but I don't know if she's.
Oh, great. Athena, you're on stage.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we are.
That was actually one of the things I wanted to ask a question, is to find out whether this could actually work. What I did is I am in the Passable platform, and there's the raise hand option there, and I just used that, and you saw it and you unmuted me, so that's great. That's how everyone can do it. And I do have a question related to these sorts of crowdfunding. As everyone here knows, libraries don't have a whole lot of money. We have a lot of enthusiasm for these sorts of projects, and I think many of us share the goals, but trying to find the money for this sort of thing, especially right now, is extremely difficult. And I'm wondering if anyone has, I don't know, any ideas for how to find richer funders for this sort of project. Do you have any efforts underway to reach beyond libraries? Because I can tell you our coffers are slim.
So we are talking to larger funders, but we are at the same time talking to libraries. So we know, of course, with COVID, it's a very difficult situation for all libraries. But the board, the SCOSS board, they are also made up of the networks of academic libraries, and they still stand behind that it's really important that we think about, even however small, if it's $500, that you can contribute a small amount towards some of these infrastructures if possible, because what are the consequences? They might, the consequences might be that if they go away, it's going to be more costly for you to offer that same service, or a commercial provider snaps them up and you're also then locked in. So if you have a means to cut costs somewhere, to contribute a small amount, everything helps. And this is the strength of the crowdfunding, is that if everybody contributes a small amount, you know, we can reach some of these larger targets. Now, we also understand that it depends on the size of your institution and whether you're a research intensive organization, and there are some institutions much wealthier than others. So those, above all, if you are also doling out a lot of money for APCs, we are talking about contributing one APC for one of these infrastructures, for example, right? So we know that not everybody will be able to, but we are just calling to those who can, please, however small, make that contribution, because together we can achieve a lot more.
May I, Vanessa?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you, Athena, for that question. In DOAJ, we have more or less a policy that we will not apply for grant funding. So far, we have sort of managed without grant funding. I think actually being to rely on crowdfunding from many institutions has brought a lot of good things. First of all, it is as well a channel to listen to the community, to get input to your mission and your strategy. And so far, we have managed relatively well. I know COVID brings a lot of terrible things, but being a former library director for many years, I would guess that the budgets you used to use for travel and conferences is somewhat reduced in this period of time. So a little bit of those budgets might go into a smaller contribution for open infrastructures. We have to be creative. So the thing about travel and conference budgets might be an idea to consider. Thank you.
And if I can just add a sort of an additional area of funding that we've been able to count on has been to offer paid services on top of our free offerings. So everything, as I mentioned, everything we do, we give away for free. But if a library, for example, wanted to use our software but didn't have the technical ability to host it themselves, they can pay us for those additional services. And that's been a way to help increase our sustainability. So I think all of these projects, we're all looking at, you know, innovative ways to be able to sustain ourselves in addition to the crowdfunding. But the crowdfunding is extremely helpful because it allows us to focus on, it allows us to spend directly on our operations. Grants often, you know, have strings attached that, you know, it's, you know, connected to, you know, developing a new feature or, you know, some innovation, which is great, but it doesn't pay the day-to-day bills. And even the commercial soft services we offer require staff to do that. So the actual profit is lower. Crowdfunding is wonderful because it really allows us to put that money into our core operations and really benefit everybody.
Thank you. Any more questions?
We have a hand raised, and we also have 3 chat questions. How do you like?
3 chat. Okay. Brian, do you want to read those out, or John?
Yeah, so Christina asked, do any of you generate revenues to complement community sponsorship? And if so, how?
So I can say that OAPEN works with publishers, and we charge fees to host the books of publishers. We work with research funders that we charge them, provide a service for them for the deposit of open access books. And so about over a third of our revenue comes from services that we offer to various stakeholders in open access book publishing. And beyond that, some of the money comes from grants. Lars said he doesn't work with grants. We do part of our development work through grants. So that's also a revenue stream.
If I may add something here, the only, let's say, revenue that we had and in the past were grants indeed. Our philosophy is not to have revenues for our services. This is how we work basically, and our philosophy behind Open Citations. So we think that indeed crowdsourcing support by the community is the way to go, honestly, for what we offer. Also because grants are just, you know, are great, are really great that help us in becoming what we are right now, but this is a system that cannot work in the long run, in my opinion. So that's why community support is key for kind of infrastructure like Open Citation, at least.
Thank you very much. Can we squeeze another 2 questions in before they cut us off? We continue the conversation on Zoom. Please look out for it in the chat. We've put the link in there, but still those who are jumping to another session. So Brian,
Vanessa, they will give us a 10 minutes grace period. So
good.
All
All
right.
right.
We get a hall pass, so you go into the hall and go to the next study hall where you've set up a new room. So,
So
Chris,
which questions?
Chris, you have Wi-Fi?
they won't cut you off at noon. I mean, at 1 o'clock, they'll let people straggle out and straggle into your continuation room.
I'm here. This is Chris Ferguson. I'm the interim dean of libraries at Murray State University. First, I want to say we are getting approached more and more to participate in what I would call crowdfunding opportunities. And it is a couple of challenges on our end. One, I think it's, I want to respond a little bit to the suggestion that we could use travel funds. One, those are 2 different pots of money. We don't use our travel funds to buy collections. Those are 2 different pots of money, and those are not interchangeable from the university perspective. In fact, many institutions are having their travel funds swept due to COVID to balance budgets in other areas. So those aren't necessarily interchangeable on our end. But one of the big things that I think libraries have a difficult time justifying to university administration is an investment in crowdfunding things when universities say, well, we get that for free anyway, right? Why would like those resources are available for free? Why would we invest in DOAJ? Why would we invest in these things? Those are out there for free. What is the return on the investment? And that's one of the big things that libraries and institutions of higher ed is, what is the ROI that we get for that crowdfunding investment? And we can talk about being good members of the scholarly community and what we contribute to for that. But the other thing is deciding which opportunities we might participate in. If we have a set amount of funds and we say, okay, well, we've given to, say this investment opportunity, or, we've invested here, but we can't do it here. So there's a lot that more and more crowdsourcing opportunities are coming to us, and we are very tight. So just to speak to some of the challenges that libraries are facing when we are being asked to participate and join into these.
So maybe can I just briefly answer that, and then I'd like to invite any of the other panelists. So when you're talking about that more and more are knocking on your door, it's true. They are needing to be creative and reaching out to the community. So the SCOSS model, though, is about we invite applications from the open science infrastructure community. They need to be reasonably mature, have shown their value over time, and show that they have a real sustainable problem. And they need to have they need to be of international significance. So we make a recommendation. So if there are many people knocking on your door, at least for some who are contributing, they say, well, what has SCOSS recommended this year? If we can only fund 1 or 2 this year, perhaps we should have a look at what SCOSS has suggested, because it's librarians in the main in the advisory group that vets and has a thorough look at the applications. So that can help as a means to make a decision. And on the return on investment, yeah, maybe I could also talk about this a lot, but maybe I leave that to one of my colleagues. Maybe pass that on, unless they pass it back to me. Yes, I see Kevin is nodding. Kevin, do you want to say something?
Yeah, no, that's a
Thank
great
you.
question. I think that's like the core question is how to, I'm a librarian as well, and how do we, deal with these issues within the tight, fiscal situations we often find ourselves in. Part of it is having the conversations about the value of these projects and what are some of the problems that our library budgets have found themselves in because of the commercial dominance within traditional publishing, right? We've seen the costs of publishing to libraries go up and up and up. And then there's some infrastructures here and some communities and some librarians who've gotten together and said, well, an alternative is out there. It's still early days, but things are changing. And how do we want to be part of that change? The discussion of the free rider problem is really core. Like, people understand that, right? Like, there's collective benefit in these open things. And the bean counters, as somebody said in the chat, will say, well, why would I pay for something that's free? And it's, well, because if you don't, there's a free rider problem, and that's not sustainable. I think all of our projects offer benefits for your financial support of some kind or another, whether there's opportunities to participate in the community governance. So it's not just writing a check and then seeing that money go into something you've got no involvement with. There are ways to participate in the projects that are here. So we do invite you to think about the future and think about what kind of a scholarly communication future you think will be best for libraries, and what kind of small investment. And as Vanessa said, like, these are scaled. If you're a small library with a very small budget, it could be one APC worth, might be all it takes, so that you're no longer a free rider.
So I think there's one more question. I think, did we have somebody else in the chat? We had a couple of more questions, didn't we?
Yeah, we have one that says, how does membership and support of these excellent organizations translate into annual communication about annual achievements so we can use it to convince others? So I think you guys have been sort of touching on that already. And someone had a similar question of how can crowdfunding influence how to feel you demonstrate the usage of that money? So I think all the questions.
Sorry, could you repeat the last question?
Yeah, does the crowdfunding influence how you feel you demonstrate the usage of the money?
So something perhaps, so in the application process, including all here on the call today, they have a very thorough application process, and where they need to describe what their plans are and what they want to do with this money. What they need to do, they also need to sign a contract with SCOSS when we do recommend them. And they need to report at the end of the year what they have achieved from this plan, from this work plan. So year on year for the 3 years that we promote them, so that you also, and this is also published publicly, so that you, if you are contributing to them, that you know where it's going. And the contract also says that they need to deliver on the promises made in that application. So hopefully that answers the question. I think we're going to have to jump off this call and go into the Zoom room now to continue. We have a Zoom room open until the following hour, so almost an hour. So do please come and join us. We're all going to jump on that Zoom call. So if you have time, please do come. Thank you very much for your time otherwise, and do get in touch if you have any questions at scoss.org or at any of the other links in the chat. Thank you. See you shortly.